let's see. So these are some announcements that
You want him to put up your screen?
well,
Yeah, I got it. Just
you
maybe
got
a
it.
little
Cool.
bigger.
Make it a little bigger.
For me, I'm always hitting control plus 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 plus, but that's just me.
That was the large part.
Oh,
Okay.
look at this news.
Yeah. So one of
that's
the things that
right.
came out the 12th, what was that, last Tuesday? So definitely after we were on the last time. Basically that the release candidate of .NET MAUI is out. So if you are looking to do cross-platform development, whether it's Windows or iOS, Android, or what have you, .NET MAUI release candidate 1, I believe, is what they specifically launched. Yes. Still available when you install or update Visual Studio 2022 Preview. And then on the Mac, there are certain instructions to follow that as well. So chance to go play for it because it's release candidate. So a lot of the APIs are baked, or at least the calls. So that should make it much easier to transition into the full GA version once that hits.
Do you know if that release candidate includes go live? Because sometimes it does. Sometimes it
They
doesn't.
typically do. I haven't seen anyone.
Yeah, I was trying to scan. Either way, right? We're getting close. Either way.
Yeah.
Getting close with Maui. Did we do a show on Maui yet?
Yeah, we
did one a long time ago.
Yeah,
with
it's
Sam?
been a while. We had Sam on, yeah.
Oh, Sam. Yeah, Sam did Maui, right.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get him back in here.
Yeah, now that this is getting close to GA, that'd be fun. Yeah, so great question, Andy. Not sure. I don't usually, well, that's it. It just says it's RC1.
There's a lot interesting going on in this space. There's a little bit of acronym parade going on, right? What does Maui mean? But then there's more to it than just, okay, I'm using Maui, because you can use and again, I'm not sure I have the terminology correct, but you could build a Maui app with the complete XAML based approach that is very familiar if you're coming from, say, Xamarin Forms or Xamarin, or if you're coming from WPF or coming from, I don't know, UWP, those kind of UI based models. But at the same time, what is shipping is, I'm probably going to get the terminology wrong, but it's essentially like Blazor on Maui, because there's a web view control that basically, so you ship a Blazor app, and it's really interesting because now that opens up this model to all kinds of skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, I'm just being honest, is that I think it creates some confusion. So the trick will be for all of us, and folks like us and folks that are interested in talking about it, to try and cut through that and say, hey, this lets you to build an application that you can ship on Windows, on Android, on iOS, and then I want to say that there's even some other support in there. I don't want to overstate, but I felt like there was some talk about Mac OS support. But anyways, but what if your skill set isn't that XAML based? Some folks might have experience with it. I did some WPF back in the day. I did. But that was a while ago, and there's plenty of developers who they listen. My team understands web technology, so we can be productive with this too. And that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and like you said, having that ability to do that web control and bring Blazor components into there. But if you still want to, if you're used to using, you're building Xamarin type applications, but now using the Maui UI and the Maui controls, you still have those capabilities in there too. And as we see here, I think latest for building Android, iOS, Mac OS, and Windows. all from the one
Mhm.
framework. And then Andy,
Yeah, and
we missed it
I
because
just post. What's that?
real quick, we missed it because we went past the first paragraph. But in the first paragraph,
Yeah.
this release is covered with Go Live
Oh,
support.
there it is.
So.
Yeah, yeah, right at the top.
Yes,
And I had posted an article in our chat internally that I found an article mentioning it. But yeah, you got it right there. So we got Go Live support. So that's good. It means
That's awesome.
you can ship Maui.
Yeah, and
That's cool.
it has support, which is cool.
Yep.
Excellent.
It might
so,
be interesting to compare this versus, I know there's some other open source players in this space, like the Uno platform. And I think the other one's called like Avalonia, but I could be wrong. If I got that wrong, I apologize. It's really, I think it's interesting to see this sort of, I don't know if it's a renaissance, but sort of a this emphasis again on, doesn't it always seem to go back and forth? Like, hey, everything web, and now, hold on, maybe targeting native, there's advantages. And then I guess it depends on what you're doing, right? That's the whole idea. What is the app you're building? You really got to put that thought into it.
Yeah. And what's the skill set you're bringing?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that gets underrated way too much is because I get asked a lot over the years. And I have answered this question this way is, hey, I've got a team and we're looking at what we might use in order to build X. Well, what might you build? And I have actually turned around and said, well, what is your team good at? Because if they're not good at, and let's go back a ways. If they're not good at WPF, there's some learning curve there. But what if they're already a skilled web team? Well, I don't know. That's a skill set you already have. Do you really? Maybe you should invest in it, right? So
yeah, and probably one you're always going to have. So someone would be able to come through and update that application, even though so it doesn't. In case that one person decide, hey, they wanted to do it as a, using
right,
the Maui UI, you don't have to do that.
Right. No, that'll be fun. Because, I have been saying for a while that I would like to build a dev talk show app for no other reason than to get in the App Store and to see if I can make it run on the Xbox, get it into the Xbox App Store. That's the only motivation. I mean, because I think that's fun.
Everybody needs a motivation, and that's not a bad one.
So that was one. Did you? I remember. So this was just so everybody knows. We didn't. Rich said there's a couple announcements we should talk about, and we said, okay, well, let's be surprised. So what was there? Was that the one, or did you have another one?
That's one.
Okay.
So there's this one, which is.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I did see this too.
This came out recently. I don't have the. I have to go back through my notes and find the original blog post, but basically, this is what it points to: is the fact, and I'll be honest, that blog post was like 3 sentences, but basically pointing to here, which is tutorial on deploying Azure Container Apps. And we talked about Azure Container Apps as well a couple months ago at this point, probably, late January, if I'm not mistaken. But that was, essentially having an infrastructure for deploying containers, and has Kubernetes, managing and orchestrating, but I don't have to own all of that. I can just focus on my apps. So that's there's using Visual Studio, and then there's also recent tooling, and these are preview tooling using Visual Studio Code as well. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is you probably remember we had the show where we tried to use container apps, and we got extremely close to getting the app working. And I could not stop. For those who may not know, I could not stop thinking about it the rest of that night. And I got up early the next morning and hit the stream button and just insisted, I'm going to figure this out. And I actually got the app running. But
this was your app that was looking at the Twitch messages.
Twitch messages, right? Like I have this whole platform, event-driven platform idea of let's have some kind of long-running service, perhaps living in a container. I don't know that it has to live in a container, but I don't think it's a bad choice for it. And and it's just a long running service listening to a chat room, perhaps on Twitch. What I'd like for it eventually to do is listen to multiple chat rooms. And then all it does, the only thing it does is just fire an event to event grid. And the idea was to really separate out responsibilities, to say that is all you know how to do. All you know how to do is ship this message to event grid. You don't care what happens next. And then event grid says, I don't really care what happens next either. Whoever subscribes, they care. And I feel like that's the launching point for maybe chat bots, or maybe displaying chat, or all kinds of interesting things. But we've gotten that working in Azure Container Instances, I think even on this show, but there was a little hiccup in Azure Container Apps. And the next morning was determined to see it working there, and got it mostly to the finish line, but then learned a lot about how I probably need to rework the app a little bit.
It's always something.
To be a little bit more of a long-running, long-lived service than it was. It was really a console app before, but
that's right. I remember that. It was a console app.
Yeah. So that's cool. That's cool.
So is there more news?
Well, there was lots of news, but there were things that I was kind of interested in. I thought, like, oh, that's pretty cool. And that other one is there's essentially a guide here on securing your APIs that sit behind API management. We talked about API management on this show, right?
Yeah, Rich, zoom that in a bit if you could.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Each page, it's odd. Each page is independent.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes they go together.
So API management, well, that's not new, right?
No. The API management part is not, but essentially being able to secure those APIs, that's not been new either. We've been doing that for a while, but I think the new one here is focusing on the protection mechanisms that we have inside of the Microsoft Identity Platform. So having that capability included now as you protect. So think about, you call API management, that's your facade layer over top of your APIs. And then having the ability, once you connect to that API, or being able to connect to that API on the back end, and doing that securely. So that's what we're talking about here.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a good walkthrough here. There's
always something new.
Yes.
Yeah, so after talking about Azure Container Apps being kind of like, the Kubernetes cluster as a service, Off the Rails Gaming says now you need to show doing the opposite, roll your own Kubernetes cluster. Are there enough hours in a particular show? Actually, not a skill that I really have, but certainly, it's the new infrastructure, right? Like, I've never been the greatest networking person.
Yeah.
I mean, like, understand. I know a little bit, but I also know that I don't know a lot. And it feels like the new networking stack where I go, okay, well, I don't know a whole lot about that either. I kind of know a little bit, but hopefully there's somebody smarter than me in terms of Kubernetes. But
yeah, usually it is. There's usually somebody you can point to who's been, rolling their own server at home, as it were, which is how we all used to get experience. Cool. That's it. That's all I got. I got those three. There were plenty of more announcements, but I thought those were kind of interesting because they were all topics we've talked about. We've talked about Maui in the past, and container apps and API management. So I thought I would bring those back. And thank you for stopping sharing my screen so that I can get to the real screen that we want to get to. Let me close that.
Right.
Close that.
Yeah. So so that sounds like you're ready to get into the real topic at hand, right?
Why not?
What we said we're going to talk about on this show is a topic that I am excited about. I think it's a topic. I think Chris was saying it in sort of in the chat also, like internally, that it's not. Am I right? This is not an area that you or I are super familiar with.
Not really. No. I mean, I know what it is. I followed it.
Right. Like me too.
But I haven't done the demo. I haven't done this quick start. I don't have the t-shirt. I've barely looked at the brochure, so that's about it.
Yeah, I've used it once or twice, and like I said, I think it's compelling, and that's it's coming from a guy who has for many years taken the standard developer approach to this kind of stuff, this low code, no code, options. And the developer approach has typically been like mine is like, no, 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 no. I'm a developer. I don't need that. I can write this myself, right? Like I'm a professional. But but when I see more about it, it's compelling. There's a lot of stuff you can do in here that's pretty interesting. And I like the guardrails and stuff like that. But I don't want to spoil anything. I'm just saying I'm excited about this show. I think it's pretty cool, this topic.
Yeah, so we're
Yeah,
talking about
definitely.
none other than the Power Platform, which I often see on Twitter with the hashtag less code, more power. And
Nice.
I know that it's gotten the attention of people who the reason why it also got my attention is these are people I followed a long time, like Donna Sarkar, who for quite some time was behind the Windows build rollouts, you know, quite literally making the go no go decisions and promoting insider builds so that developers and enthusiasts could really test and give feedback on new Windows features. Like she really brought that to the fore. She's such a great she's really good at generating excitement. And so when she made the decision to move from that, which was a pretty key important role, says, well, I'm going to go work on Power Platform. And also April Dunham, who, if I remember correctly, long time SQL Server and data platform. I hope I'm not wrong about that. But then also spent a lot of time on Power Platform as an MVP. And now she joined Microsoft to do developer relations here. And it's just like, hey, like these are people that I pay attention to and learn a lot from, and they want to look at this. That got my attention. So
Yeah, and April has a great YouTube channel as well.
yeah,
as well as posting videos into the Power Platform channel. So definitely check out her content. Is amazing when it comes to getting up speed and learning about Power Platform. There is a lot in here, right? It's not just
yeah,
I can make an app. There's a whole host of different ways that you can build apps. There are a whole host of ways that you can connect to various data sources. And we'll talk about some of those when we go through things here. I'm going to be focusing on this from just kind of the citizen developer side of things. I'm the business person. I've got a Powerapps license. I can go and I can start building my own set of apps that are focused on my line of business and the things that I want to do and capture and maintain. There is a whole other part of this conversation that we're not going to be able to get to tonight, but be aware of the other side of the conversation, which is, Andy, to your point, right? We have developers who are out writing code, writing APIs against their line of business data, or building custom controls and things along those lines. That's the pro developer side of it. And there's a great unification story between what happens on the pro dev side and what happens on the citizen developer side, and being able to share the work and be able to enable that citizen developer to make really awesome apps just by giving them a little bit of line of business data, or giving them some augmented control that doesn't exist natively in the platform. And we could do a second show on those pieces. But I think here we just wanted to make people aware around what some of the things you can do to get started with Power Platform.
yeah, it's a bigger topic than we'll be able to look at in one night, but just to maybe a little background, there are many developers I've met, many who's when you kind of ask like, hey, how did you get started, it's like, well, I was working on some stuff in Excel and I discovered there was this whole VBA platform in there, and next thing I knew, I was kind of had this Excel spreadsheet with buttons and it was doing stuff and it was reaching out to databases, and it's almost like a little app. And something I did very, very early in my career is I built and kind of curated and got a Microsoft Access based application going for for where I was working. And again, these were all solutions that developers would kind of look at them and say like, oh, that's not like, I don't know what the like real code or something. But the fact of the matter was it solved a problem. So I feel
Right.
like this has been something that has been tried many, many times, except that this isn't brand new or didn't come out last week. It's had some staying power for a couple of years now.
Mhm.
So I can't wait
Yeah,
to see
Let's
it.
get into it. Let's see what it
Can't wait to
is.
see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're looking at my screen, right? And I'll be honest, you have to keep me honest with
Yeah.
what's going on in the chat.
Yeah,
I can't
I've
see any
switched
of that at
over.
all.
It's a little far away just
You
because
gotta zoom it
I
in.
don't know if you're in 4K or something, but
Hang on.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
No worries. Better?
Oh yeah, it's getting better
Nice.
now. Oh yeah,
yeah, that's
beautiful.
nice. That's good.
So some of the things, just kind of take a look at here. So this is a Powerapps environment that I created, or essentially got up and running. There is, what is it, Dev Insider? And I'm gonna.
Are you talking about like a program that lets you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it that Visual
that-
Studio Essentials or something like that?
That's it. That's the one I want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a program anyone can sign up for. It just requires a Microsoft
Yep.
account, and
Yep.
out of the box you get some access to some things. I think you get like some Pluralsight courses that Microsoft's partnered with Pluralsight to make available. And I guess I didn't know this, but it sounds like you could use this to set up a Power Platform environment. Is that
Exactly.
Okay.
Let's see, Charles and software. Yep, this is what I'm looking for. Come on. No, we're gonna stay here because I'm using.
But there's
so I
other
am
ways to set
signed
this
in.
up, right? Like as an enterprise, I think we have Power Platform. I'm just trying to understand. Like, not everyone needs. You're saying this is a good way to get started. I think is the Dev Essentials, right?
You can't say. So I guess what I wanted to make sure is why I don't have access to Power Platform, or our company won't turn on Power Apps for us to let us go ahead and start building apps. This gets you around that, right? So you can start kicking the tires, test this out. This plan here, I was kind of surprised when it showed up a month or so ago when I started looking for it. So this is how you would go ahead and get started. The important thing here is, and with this account is also my MSDN account. So you want to make sure that the tenant and how you sign into your Power Apps, you do that with the same account that your Azure AD, or yeah, the same Azure AD tenant that your Microsoft MSDN subscription would be, right? Because then Azure and Power Platform now all live under the same Azure AD environment, right? So you want to make sure you do that when you step through it. If you don't, then some of the integrations may not show up inside of Power Apps. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like picking the account. So someone like me who has a long history with a personal Microsoft account, but then goes to work and has a work-based Microsoft account, I got to pick the right one so that I'm working on work stuff versus, my own stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if when you create your Azure account for your MSDN account, right, you have to give it some kind of a tenant name, something at .onmicrosoft.com. Using that same domain when you create your Power Apps is going to make them all be able to see each other. It's the main point I want to make sure we get.
Okay.
So we go back into Power Apps, our Powerapps environment. We think about apps because that's some of the things that are kind of put up in front here. So we could build a blank app. We can build something using various sources of data. We could use some of the standard ones we've heard of, like SharePoint or Excel or SQL. But then we also have this thing called Dataverse, and that is essentially our own ability to create a data environment inside of our Power Platform environment here. So you have the ability to customize tables, create tables, and connect to that data that lives inside of Power Apps. So I don't have to go out to SharePoint and go out to Excel. If I do, it's easy for me to connect those in, but I don't have to if that's not where my data lives, or I don't have data living in any of those spaces to start off with. So building an app is one of those things that we can do. But if we look down the left here, we'll talk about flows in a bit, but we can use the Power Platform to build chatbots, something called Power Virtual Agents. So this is an ability for us to, define through, low code mechanisms, a conversational user interface, and have that be deployed in a Teams environment or deployed into a web page. There's a component in here called AI Builder, which lets you do some of the things that are typically available in cognitive services, right? So being able to recognize forms, or being able to include additional business intelligence in your applications. And it's a whole bunch of capabilities here that you can bring in. So like text recognition or receipt processing, and use those and make them part of your process, right? And then in addition, but not listed here, there's also RPA, or remote procedure calls. So being able to automate, remote procedure automation. So being able to script and run against applications and pull that, and have that scripting happen and pull that data aside. So there's a lot of, and we're glancing across the surface of these, but there's a lot of complexity and a lot of opportunities to build very different applications, and putting that all in the hands of the business user.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, there's a lot going on here. And you could like chain all these things together too, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you could, and one of the ways of kind of chaining or hooking these discrete components together is using something called flows. And that's how it's still listed here. Power Automate is kind of the common name for it. But it gives you the ability to put workflows together. If you've done Logic Apps in Azure, it's the same engine. Logic Apps is the engine under the covers that runs Power Automate, and then you get the same kind of templates to create these various flows that take advantage of the hundreds of the connectors that are in place inside of the Power Platform, similar to the connectors that are up in Azure that you use in Logic Apps.
So on that flows, so flows is that, which way are we going with the naming? Is flows replacing the term for Power Automate, or is Power Automate, or are they just both there? Like, are they just used sort of differently?
Yeah, Flows was the original. Microsoft Flow was the original name. It's Power Automate is the current name.
That is the new name. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, cool. And there's some interesting stuff on here. Like, I'm just looking at this. Post your most recent Instagram media to Blogger. Like, these are just examples, like templates that are already out there.
Yes.
I bet you could learn a lot just from going through some of these templates.
Oh, definitely. So, I mean, if you were to click on this, you can see so because this particular one uses connectors, and two connectors that are already available, one related to Instagram. So I'd have to sign into that so that it can access my Instagram account for certain things. And then a Blogger connector, and then I have to sign into that as well. And then once I do that, now everything is essentially wired up for it to start listening for me to post on Instagram and push that content into Blogger.
It's cool.
It's funny you said Logic Apps, and as a developer, that is what jumped out at me, was the idea of, taking as maybe as a developer, I think to myself, what's something I do all the time? I talk to a REST endpoint. Well, what if somebody made a connector for me that did that? That's become so boilerplate that let's let a connector do that, and then that way I can just focus on the stuff that's unique to what I'm doing. Calling a REST endpoint, no big deal. Saving to a database, whatever. We do it all the time. Get the boilerplate out of the way. This seems like it's another level up, where I'm thinking developer level, talk to a database, read from a service, whatever. This is saying get from Instagram, post to Blogger. So it's the next abstraction layer up, the application, and or more. I don't want to say that I've got it wired and I totally understand everything you can do with flows, but
right.
But that's what came to mind.
Yeah, but exactly. Those are the important parts, right? Logic App or a Flow, they start with some kind of a trigger. And for, you know, at the core sense, it starts with a trigger. So that trigger could be some event happening. And if we have a connector that's created that's listening for that you can sign up to and listen for that event, then that's one less thing that you have to build or code yourself. You could certainly, I'm sure there's an API on Instagram that you could, ping and say, hey, have I posted anything there recently? Do you really want to wire all that up, or just take
Someone probably
advantage?
just did that already, right?
Exactly.
And that's why it's in here as a connector or whatever they're called, right? Because someone went and wired it up already.
Yep. And that's what
So why do I need to
happened,
do it, right? I mean, Chris, I thought you're, I don't know if it's accurate or 100% accurate, but I like your analogy of like it's just one more layer of abstraction.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's accurate. At least it's accurate enough, like for our conversation, whether it really is that.
I think it is. I agree.
Yeah.
But you can, so this is, and we can drop a link to this in the chat, but essentially this is all of the connectors that are available, essentially a reference of all the connectors. And there are hundreds of them. There are, obviously things that Microsoft. Yep, Azure DevOps, services in Azure, but also services outside of Azure. So look at Bitbucket, look at Box, things that are not necessarily Microsoft properties or services, but they're the things that business people want to connect to. So instead of them having to manually do that, let's just give them the connector that let's own and maintain that connection portion for them.
Seeing these connectors, the ideas start flowing, right? Is after posting a blog post, you had a bit.ly connector. So let's take the link for the blog post and get me a short link. So that way I can go to Twitter and use that short link in a tweet. And why write all that code, or even just, focus on what's unique about what you're doing instead of saying, okay, let me fire up a code environment and do the stuff that I've done a million times.
And just to go into, drilling into this, that specific list of connectors, the documentation here is really helpful to understand, well, what does this connector do? Because there are many things, Bitly's, what it can do, there's probably a certain set of services, but if you're talking to something like YouTube, well, there's a lot of things we can do in YouTube. What services are available to me through the YouTube connector? This is where the documentation comes in. So the important part, or to start off with, is this section here at the top, right? What services, where can I use this connector? So Logic Apps, Power Automate, and in Powerapps. So I can use this as a way of connecting out to that service for my application. Are there any restrictions as far as what regions where it might not be available? So for customers who aren't in an Azure public cloud but are using GCC or a China cloud, they can't use these connectors, this particular connector, if their instance is in that location. So things to be aware of as you start to go through it, and then some information about the publisher, throttling limits, and then what are the actions, right? I can create a bit link, and really that's the only action here.
Yeah.
But there's no trigger. So there's nothing here that says, hey, when something happens in Bitly, go ahead and do some stuff in a workflow. This is really saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and call out to Bitly and get a link created.
Which is what you would do with Bitly, right? So it makes sense.
Yep. Sorry, there's a trigger.
There's a trigger.
Yep. Usually and it's in preview, so it's still being worked on. But yeah, so they have a trigger out there as well. But you can see essentially the API calls, right? But it's wrapped in a connector. What do I got to give, and what will I get back?
See, I have manual workflows like this that I'm ashamed to say that
like what?
There's some folks that I watch on Twitch, and what's happened over the years is something cool will happen while they're playing a game or whatever they're doing, and I'll clip it, right? But then I want to remember that clip later. And so what I do is I grab the link and I post it to Bitly. And so I can go back later in Bitly and kind of search for stuff, because to me it's like, it's where I'm keeping this stuff, right? But I'm thinking, I'm doing all that manually. What
Right.
what a pain, right? Why isn't it just saying like, oh, you made a clip? Let me create the link for you, and heck, I'll do you one better. Like, go put it into a table storage so that some website can say, hey, here's a website based on all of the links that you're saving, and it just does it.
Yeah. Right. That's cool. Yeah, it's a little bit of, I mean, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of analogies. I'm sure lots of people have like, these are all things we've been doing, and this is just another way to make it easier to do those things already, you know.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
So are we
So
going to
I
build
will
up
say
the
there is-
flow? Is that what you want to start
Yeah,
with,
we're
or
gonna
would
do-
look at something else?
No, we kind of tangented a little bit, but
Okay,
the idea
sorry.
is, I will say there is no connector for Twitch. Just in looking through the connector list, that's kind of interesting.
But I heard you say YouTube.
There is. Let's see, where's the YouTube one? YouTube.
So flows was just one thing, right? And then I think
Yep.
what we're going to talk about is there's other pieces here. You mentioned the chatbots.
Yes. So yeah, I'm not sure that. Let's do this. So yeah, we can build chatbots, but what we're going to do here is we're actually going to build an app,
Nice.
and a nice simple app. And you say, hey, well, I'm in the app section. I want to create a new app. What, how do I do? What should I do? And then you get immediately presented with some choices. So do you want to do a canvas-driven app? Do you want to do a model-driven app, or do you want to do a portal? And how do you know the difference, right?
Right.
So when we when we think about this, right, this canvas app idea is that you're essentially taking, you essentially have a, much like it says, you have a blank canvas to work with. So you have the ability to connect to various data sources. You can arrange the data however, or arrange the form you want, or arrange the application components that are on there however you want. You have a lot of flexibility in how you build out that, how you lay out that canvas essentially. A model-driven app is
Rich. Sorry to bug you and interrupt again, but you got to zoom in a little bit. I think that's just gonna be hard for people to see.
What's that? The screen?
Yeah. I think you were zoomed in before, but like now we can. That's readable. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, we got the.
If you do control,
Really, I
when you
heard that
drag your
somewhere.
mouse there. Chris, were you with us last week when Rich taught me about that? For the probably more than the first time he's taught me that again and again. But the arrow, how'd you do the arrow?
I think that was Alt.
Oh, Alt. Oh, look at that.
No. Control and Shift.
Control and Shift gives you the arrow. That's slick. Okay, so I don't want to go too far. So you did canvas is like a blank canvas, right?
Yep, exactly. Model driven. So that is where we talked or mentioned that there is a thing called Dataverse. You can build out your data structure inside of Dataverse and use that data model to populate, essentially be the way of populating forms, and be able to populate lists and things of that nature, because it's driven off of model that the data model itself, as opposed to be having that control to do it.
Okay.
So it just depends the direction on how you want to start. And then the other one is Portal, and Portal is essentially a way of doing an external website for people who could be outside your organization or could be in your organization as well, but they don't necessarily have to have a license to look at the app that you're building. So it's a public, externally facing environment that can provide information and data or controls for them to interact with, just like any old website.
That's cool.
Yeah. What we're going to do is we're going to to say, let's go ahead and create a Canvas app. Actually, well, we can do that from here. But what I want to do is actually, yeah, let's try this. Let's do this from here. We'll stick with Canvas.
Let's do it.
Why not? What could go wrong?
What
Right.
could go
So we
wrong?
do this, and click off that too quick. You essentially have two forms. There's a tablet form, but there's also a phone form. So it depends on the layout that you want to have for your application. What I'm going to do is
Interesting that they don't have like desktop, but I guess, you know.
Well, tablet kind of would be that that shape. All right.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
But yeah, that's a good point. So we're going to create a gallery. And that gallery is going to, by default, it has, we can see here, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Oops. You can see in this space here, we have essentially a drop-down selector that we can set the properties on for our application. In this case here, we're looking at the items property for our application, and that's essentially just basically pulling in data from this dummy table, essentially the custom gallery sample. And we got the lore ipsum values inside of here. And that's great for helping us understand the layout and see what's going on with the form. But we want to, connect this to some real data. And then the way that we're going to do that is, let's see. Oh, that's just going to get the sampling. Gave it to me when we started here, and then I didn't accept it. Let's see. There we go, data source, and we're going to edit. There we go, came up here. So we want to look at some of the things that might already exist. So in our environment, we have in our particular environment that we're in, and I'll talk about that in a second, we have a number of tables that are available for us. They're called entities, but they're, think of them as essentially data structures or tables. And if we look over here, make sure we're in the right environment, and we look at, our data tables, we have those same values. We have account, address, appointment, just like we had over here when we were looking at them. We could go into account, and we can see the data structure of that account table. These are all essentially the fields, the types of fields. We can look at the data itself, and we see right now we don't have any records inside of here, but we could certainly add records to this as well. So you've got this, essentially this capability of defining, a rich structure for your data, all inside of the same place where you're building your application. If we want to, we could link out to other data sources or pull data in from some kind of spreadsheet, or do things from that perspective. I say get data. Let's see where that goes. So we've got via the Power Query this ability to pull data from various data sources, including.
Not very limiting. I mean, there's a lot. Like, look at it. I mean, it's just stuff.
Yeah, and these are, so this is all the categories that are there. Now, as you can imagine, it has some of the common ones that are there. So we could certainly do this. If we knew our Azure SQL environment, we could make that connection to it, provide the connection, credentials, and all of those things. There's actually a bit of an easier way to do that from the Azure side of things. So if we go to maybe later. shoot, I'm signing this. Well, that should work.
Oh, the joy
So-
of having multiple tenants.
So let's just do this real quick. We'll that's fine. We'll throw it there. Database name. Sure, we need a new server. Why not? Hey, who knew that was available? We'll do both.
I thought we would have
Look at
used
that.
that already.
It's the last like 4-letter SQL database.
Ever. Yeah, the last one left in the hole. Yeah.
Make this guy the admin. Awesome. Nope, don't need a pool. Don't want that. We want to. Let's keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Locally redundant. Yep, so it's $5 a month. Nice. That'll take a few seconds to do, but the reason I'm doing that is, if we look at our connection strings over here, I've got to provide this information into Power Query to make that connection happen. Whereas if I go over here, once this completes,
A little Jeopardy theme music or something like that. I don't have that one.
actually, what we'll do is we'll just let that roll. So let's
Yeah.
go back to here. If I'm selected on my gallery control, right? So think of this, we had something similar in when we did, when we did web forms and Windows forms, we had the data
Yeah.
table
Oh,
or
yeah.
the data list.
Right. And they were like controls on your web form. I remember that.
Similar idea, right? You had an
Right.
item template, you had a list of items, and that's all we're doing here. So we could go ahead and say, well, let's bind this one to the activities table. And it's going to go ahead and load that shape for us. And you can see, hey, it's got some information already in here. If I click on this, you'll see, hey, this is subject. Well, what if I don't want subject? Well, what else is available? I get dot notation inside of here as well. So I can see the shape of the object without having to go and look at the database, have access to the database or whatever, and I can select the thing that I want. So let's just go ahead and actually, let's leave that as
Was it name? What was subject?
subject. There we go. Let's leave that as subject. Let's come into here. There's a subtitle. Well, the subtitle doesn't seem to be as something in there called start date. That's fine. Let's pull that out. Let's drop in that description.
Yeah.
And
I missed it. Had
yes.
we picked a connection there from the Dataverse or from somewhere else? I missed it.
Yeah, absolutely. We connect.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. Let me use the description. Okay, we won't do the description then. We used. Sorry, we made. I'll show you where we did that. Let me get this back to where it was at the start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actual start. There we go. So we're looking at the item
This
here.
phone loses scope. Are you in the wrong place or something? Yeah.
I don't think
You
so.
were in, you were in
Yeah, we had
subtitles.
that. So subtitle is here. That's the proper. That's the
Yeah.
control name, and then over here we're binding it to actual start.
Right.
So we're going to keep that. Chris, to your point, we were in the gallery, and then
Right.
on the gallery, we can choose the data source,
Yeah.
and that's what
Okay.
that's where we picked this.
So we were setting up. Let me see if I have this right. We were setting up an Azure SQL database because that is something that could be an option here.
Exactly. That was
Okay.
all just to kind of show. Yeah.
Right. But what I'm reading in the Dataverse docs is that Microsoft gives you a couple sample Dataverse kind of sets. It's probably the typical stuff like, people and managers. Maybe I don't know what it is, but so that you can get started trying out Powerapps without having to link stuff up. And that's what you're using now.
That's what I'm using now. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I did go back and forth. If
Yeah, did that SQL finish? It probably did by now anyway.
I would think so. Yep.
Okay.
So here's our SQL database, right? Doesn't have any data in it. That's fine. Because all we're going to do is we're going to show this, right? From my SQL environment, I can basically turn my SQL environment into an app. And from here, I can.
I've seen that. I've seen that section in the middle there where it says Power Platform and Power Apps on my SQL databases, my Azure SQL. And I've kind of been wondering what that was. So I'm kind of excited to see this because I was like, why is that there?
Okay. So a couple things. One is, this is Azure SQL. And what's one of the errors that everybody winds up hitting in Azure SQL, right? It's the
every time. Yep.
Component. Yep. So you want to set firewall settings, use my client IP address, and we say add client IP, and we save. Updates the rules, takes a couple seconds, boom, life is good. So we can go back to our database, refresh. Let's check the firewall again.
Good work.
What did we not do?
Oh, the Azure Resources Services one. Yeah, right. That's like a general. Yep.
We do that. That takes a few seconds to save. Life is good. So anything in Azure can now access our database. And then if I was going to open Data Studio or something like that, I could access the database there as well. Okay, so we're good here. Let's go back to our test. Refresh. Boom, life's good. App name, that's fine. Server name's fine. Username. That's fine.
That's going to be like your default SQL, like an SA account or something like that.
Yes.
SA no password. Sorry. Sorry. That reflex is coming back to me. I don't know why.
We don't have a table here. If we had a table here, we could select it, and then it would go ahead, create an app for us, and bind to the table with the data that was inside of it.
Right.
And essentially like a form, like it would automatically create a form over that data.
Yeah. All right. Hang on one second. Give me 2 seconds. I will. Let me do this.
2 seconds.
Table, right?
So
right.
I think maybe while Rich is working, this might be a good time to take a look at what we're doing in the future, right?
Yeah.
Let's see how quickly I can get that up and on the screen, because I actually want to see.
This is Rich's stuff. Yeah, Yeah, well, listen, so we have a YouTube channel. That's the first thing while you're saying it, right? YouTube.com, the Dev Talk Show. Where we have
Are you still showing me or are you showing you?
No.
No,
right
I'm
now,
seeing
right
you,
now, right now we are on it shouldn't be.
Sorry, I'll let you do your thing.
There it is.
I didn't think we were on his screen at all. Was I wrong about that?
No, we're not. No, you're on.
Okay. So let's
It's just that you're not sharing, so I'm still seeing his screen.
That's true. On the Skype side, you're right.
Yep.
So currently youtube.com/the Dev Talk Show. You can see we're live right now with Less Code, More Power with Cloud Platform, plus the previous shows are all here. So definitely a place to hit the subscribe button. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button, comment down below so we know what you want to see us do, or if you even have questions about the show or comments or teach us something, right? We learn from the audience just as much as from each other and what we work on here. And so now, for those who don't have a shared Skype screen, it's the meetup where tonight's episode is listed. And on May 4th, Brian Manisi is back the last time we talked to Brian about using Azure DevOps and GitHub kind of together. And we also know that Brian works a lot. I saw him for years talking about deploying resources with ARM templates, and now we're going to actually use Bicep Live, which is a domain specific language for deploying Azure resources. So
now, should we require him to wear like a costume for that night, like dress up as like Obi-Wan Kenobi or something like that? Because it is May 4th, you said, right?
Oh yeah, look at that.
And that's
true,
Star
it
Wars
is May
Day.
4th. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there isn't, let's see, the 27th in between. There isn't something up there, but that doesn't mean that I don't. I think that we do know the show. I just don't know that it's up on.
Well, I was gonna do. That's the night I'm gonna do Playwright, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just not updated, and that's next week. So yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I better get to work on that. I got a week.
Playwright is super exciting, I think, and I can't wait to look at it. It's end-to-end testing for web apps, and not the first platform that's tried to do it, but certainly I've been seeing it get a lot of attention lately, so certainly excited about that.
It's cool. Yeah. Maybe not the first, but maybe the best.
Cool.
There you go.
Are you back up, Rich? Ready to go?
I am ready. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's switch back over to Rich's screen, and then maybe
return now to our regularly scheduled program.
Yeah,
already in progress.
You've got a create table script there, ready to go.
This is one. Yep, it's all ready to go. I just want to show this because I think this is awesome. So this is just
Zoom.
More Zoom.
Yeah, Control plus plus a little bit.
There we go.
There you go.
Cool.
Okay. Awesome. All I'm going to do is hit dot. And I can.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Wait, where were you? You were in a
browser?
browser?
In GitHub. I was in GitHub. That's all you have to do. Be signed in.
Wait.
If you're not signed in, it doesn't work.
What?
But go do it again. It happened so fast that Andy
I don't even know
missed
what you're talking about.
So basically you're looking at a code file on github.com. This is the setup. You're looking at a code file on github.com, and Rich is saying he's going to hit one key on his keyboard, and that is
the period key.
Yeah. So you don't wait. You're not putting it in the URL or anything. You just hit. It's like a shortcut.
And then here comes Visual Studio Code in the browser. And you can edit. And I think if you edit, you can commit right back up to your repo from here, right? Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
So. Wow. I always learn something on this show. I should watch this show regularly.
Yeah, we got to clip that. All right. So that, I just want to show that because I pulled the code. So I took that code, I pulled it into the Azure portal. I dropped it in here. I created it. I've got a table now. It's got 11 people in there. Now let's go ahead and create. That's fine. I don't need to save it. Let's go ahead and create our Power App. I've got an app name. That's fine. I've got this.
Password 1.
There you go. And then it already knows got a table. This is what we're going to bind to. Create.
I got to see what this does.
Oh.
Pop-ups. Yeah.
Try it again.
At least you knew what to look for.
And I love how even the portal knows. Pop-ups must be enabled. Pop-ups.
Is it? Yeah, it says it right there too. Yeah, I think because you did that one once already. Okay.
Yeah, it probably exists.
It probably did something.
Oh, I see. Because it's got to pop up your brand new Power App, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here it is, reticulating splines. That's what I'm thinking of. Remember?
Yeah.
Where is that from?
Closing.
Sim City.
Uh-oh.
Ah, that's right.
Oh wait, I think
Yeah,
there's
I
a
remember
sound
that
effect for that.
ridiculous.
Go ahead.
I'm surprised
So,
Andy wasn't
do you
all
know how
over
to
it.
fix this?
I'm slow tonight. I want to apologize to our audience and to my co-hosts. Yeah, what happened here, Rich?
I'm gonna see if it tells us in the message because I think I know what the error is.
Well, it said
Okay.
it said something wasn't found, but what's unclear to me is what did it think was not found.
Right. I mean, the only thing we added there was the data. So I think it is this. So if I hit close,
Did you
hang
run
on.
that SQL statement in your shiny?
Yeah, he
And
had
you
to
saw
have
the
because
SQL
the
statement.
table showed up in the list.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So what we're gonna drop out of that. What we're gonna need to do is this. So in addition to
Yep.
this is just my client IP. It's not where
Yeah,
we were
right.
actually working from. Um,
After this
I'm gonna add
this
another
episode,
one.
Rich will be rebooting his router so that he gets a new IP.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I
So-
did last week. But what is this Power Apps? How do you know that this is? You just know this is what you need to put in there.
It is in the directions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We have to
This
read
should
the
fix it.
docs.
So it doesn't count as like because you mentioned like above. There's that button that says allow Azure services and resources, but this doesn't count as an Azure service because it's Power Apps, right?
Correct. Yeah. I think this is the issue. So we're gonna give that a go.
000, yeah.
All right. So that's saved. Oh,
Is it
it
saved?
is the same as allowing turn on Azure services. All right. So now I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's what I was looking at in the docs. I thought that was kind of odd. So this might be redundant.
I think so. So let's go back. So it's not there. Our apps. Get started.
One, two, three, four. Oh, maybe not.
Close.
New app. There's the table. Patients table.
Pop-ups
There we
allowed.
go. Leave site. Articulating splines. Oh, we didn't see it. Here it goes.
Come on, come on, come on.
You can do it. You're loading. Now we're closing. Oh. Unable to create app.
Why?
That's odd.
Is it because there's no data in the table or something like that? Like,
Well, it does. It has 11 rows.
oh, it had 11 rows. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that.
I think it's because we're live.
So
That's
off the
what
rails
I really think.
gaming says it's got some stuff in. Oh, that's just kidding. Okay, JK. Okay, and all right. So that was forget. I take that. Let's not use that. They say JK. Um,
Interesting.
And map. He's already started trying to
Who's that?
get into your network. Maybe.
oh, is that Rich's? Is that Rich's address? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, off the rails gaming, hacking Rich. That's the next on the Dev Talk Show.
Yeah.
Hacking Rich's house. Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's some connections here. Tables didn't
What
load.
the-
One of your connections may not be authenticated. Oh, hold on. I want to believe here. One of your connections may not be authenticated. Please go to the connections menu to something to fix them.
All right. So yeah, let's go to here.
Let's go to the connections menu. This is the connections menu.
Oh yeah, and it's. I wonder. It's like something. Okay, here we go. Connect to any of the tables.
Yeah, but it's not giving me a chance to fix it either.
Uh-oh. What is a more button? Wait, hit more.
There's more.
Why not?
No. Sorry,
Go
where's
back into that error. There's more. See that? Yeah. Credentials are missing or not valid. Yeah, so you know what? Here's the thing. You gave credentials, but you never set that credential up as a user, right? In the database. I think you need to give it the database credentials, not those.
true? But I mean, if I go here,
Yeah. Well, you could do
it's
that. You
already
could go
got
and add
cloud.
that as a user, right?
Uh-oh. Oh.
Oh,
I thought we
you
did
don't
both.
remember what the password was. Password one, I said, remember?
Yeah, but I think what it's
No,
saying
it's
here is that mixed mode isn't enabled, right? SQL Server auth is not enabled, which maybe we can enable here. Is that sitting in properties or security, or I can't say that I know where it is.
I think that, yeah, I mean, this is something I've run up against, but I never remember where it is. Maybe under properties.
That's a good point. I wonder if it's the server level and not the database level.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think it is a server level thing. I think you're right, because that's where you set the so that's the Active Directory part. SQL databases.
I just sent it back into there.
Yeah, I don't think you want to go in the database. What about properties on the server level?
Yep.
Uh-uh.
All right, so what else you
Okay,
got? It's not access control. I don't think.
time to see if I
Is
can
there a
find it in the
security? No,
docs.
security. Uh, oh, there it is. Support only. You have to uncheck that box.
I love how it's the dialogue even says disabling this will enable SQL Server
Yeah,
authentication.
that's a
So it's like
little
you gotta
backwards, but
uncheck
yeah.
the box to get what we're looking for. But okay,
Right.
all right, all right, all
Yeah,
right.
this is the kind of stuff that you're going to run into when you're
Yep.
doing these things at home, like for the
So
first time.
now instead of us banging into this, let's try typing in that. Yeah, you were able to log in from here, right? Yeah, query editor. There you go. Let's just make sure we have the password right. Which I mean, we might. So
Nope,
maybe not.
we don't.
Now Rich is like, uh-oh. What did I put in? Oh,
Well, he can add a new user to it. You can add a date. You can do an insert statement, and Rich is going offline though. He's going dark mode.
Hmm. Yeah, that did not work. Well, all right, let's do. So, to your point, Andy, they may not be in there. So let's just try this.
You can log in with your Active Directory auth on the next tab.
Got a table. Got
Back
that.
to the other database. Yeah, that's a good idea.
okay, here we go. This is it. This is the one. We'll just cut the rest of it out of the show. This is Poweraps. Here it is. Loading. Loading. Is this like closing? Oh.
Oh, come on.
This didn't correctly load.
I like how they have a phone layout button there so that because they imagine you saying, hey, I've got my mobile device. I just got called at 2 a.m. I'm just gonna fix it.
So yeah, try that.
Oh well,
That
was in it. That was in.
Yeah,
with,
so I would go into this thing and go to new query and just create the data, create a user. Can't you do that?
I don't know that we have access to that table, right?
No, I think, I mean, I've created in Azure SQL, I've done like, creating users and stuff like that.
On the database or the data? Or database or server?
Well, you do it on the database, but it really does it at the server level, I guess. But you do it in the query editor. You can do it.
Do you know the query?
I Google it, and then I'm like, it's like, create. I don't know.
Create
so
something.
we can. We got it.
Was
so
that
we,
helpful? I added to create. I mean, I gave you
So we
the
have a
first word.
We got a fork in the road. We can continue down the SQL Server path, or we can show the page out of, or go back to that app we were building that was pointing to the Dataverse.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just looking to see if there was something quickly to give us a user. Okay. Let's just do this. All right. So realize, yes, we'll be able to get back into from SQL and be able to tie to your database that's there. What we're showing here is that as you create, we can change the properties or what we're binding to from for any of the items in there. And like an item template, there is one of these that is our template. All the rest of them just basically follow suit. So now that we have that data inside of there, I can hit run. Right now, it doesn't take us anywhere, but it could. Essentially, it's giving us that all those data points from the database.
So this list was based on the values in an events table. Is that what it was?
The activities table, yeah.
Activities table, right? Okay.
That's fine. Yep. But if we wanted to, we should be able to put in an edit form.
Yeah, like create a row or something like that. Yeah. Cool.
Right.
Form isn't connected to any data yet. Okay.
Not here. Well, we could, right? If we do here, if I take this back a little bit, take our data form over here.
Connect to data.
Connect to data. And in this case, yep, we want to connect activities. Fine. Oh, this has, sorry, there's our data source. So we want this one to connect to activities.
On the other side, yeah. Yeah.
And that's fine. We've got all it came back and gave us all of these components. And yes, that data source
more
is
choices for some of those things as well. How did it know there's a drop down? Is there a referential table there?
So yeah, so the if we look here, I think it's looking at the default list, say all. Right, so there's the activity. And these are all the columns that are in the database, and they each have their own, or have essentially data types inside of there. So unique identifier, multi-line text, choice, what have you.
Right. This isn't actually a database. This is the multiverse. So it probably has different data types, like a choice is a thing.
Yep. And that choice could be, just to show it out, it could be choices that are listed here. But in this case, there is a data type of, there's actually a local choice. And if I go into the choices,
there's a lot of stuff going on here. Local choice.
Yeah. All right. Why did that not?
There's a column called, there's below it, there's choice. Oh, I see. Okay. Activity. Okay. And activity had
Activity status.
Status. Let's do status. Local choice. But what is the name of the choice? There's the items. There's your choices right there, right?
Yeah.
Open, completed, canceled, scheduled. Maybe they are in line. Maybe you just can't edit it.
It's possible. Yeah. Default value of state code.
Edit. Oh yeah. What if you do edit choice? That big button there.
That was that same.
That's where you were. Oh, that's weird.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a local choice. So activity name. Let's check that choices once more.
Activity pointer state code, something like that.
Okay. Activity pointer type code. Activity pointer.
Weird.
Very. It should be in here. Definitely should be. Because it said it was a local one and not a global one. Okay.
Okay. Activity. So activity is a table. And then in it, there's a bunch of columns. And there's a column called activity status.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called state code. Maybe that's what you need. State code.
Well, no, because if we look at the choice, local choice.
And see, the name is called state code. Oh, there's a display name and a name. Okay, right. View more. What does view more do?
Just tells us it's local.
Choice.
Yeah, so it should be here. All right. There's.
Oh, look at this. Relationships, business rules. I mean, I know we're stuck on this thing here, but it seems like there's a lot of features just within this Dataverse.
Yeah. So you can have some pretty complex structures inside of here.
Yeah, and there's business rules and views and forms, dashboard. There's a lot here. This is like, you know, it's kind of interesting.
All right. So let's go back to what we were kind of doing here. We want this one, the data for this control. To be action. So we want the item, and I think this is where we get this. So we want the if we look here, still in form 1. Oh, well, this is form 1. This is gallery 1. So we want the item to be gallery 1 dot selected.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think you need the function, do you?
You're right. Now let's close that. So now we've wired this up.
Yeah.
Right. So we can do that. We can run it. We can see that as we select them, and you can do that either through the arrow or just by clicking on in the space. We get the data coming over to the side. And then if we had it wired up, we could also edit and save those edits back to the data source.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it took us, think about if we were to create that on our own with, file new project.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you can empower people to do some of the stuff on their own. Like there's some stuff that you know, I'm just trying to think of these examples, like where at work somebody goes, you know what I need? I need a form. We need to build an app to do something. And you're like, what is it? And you're like, well, it's just for this thing we're doing tomorrow. It's a one-time thing. We just need employees all to be able to like select their holiday gift or something like that. Like whatever, something
Right.
simple, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of use cases for like those kind of things where like, you can just kind of like slap these things together pretty quickly.
And they're
Um,
not to, yes, you can build them out really quickly, and not that they don't have, because they're that quick, they're less powerful than some of the stuff that we might put together using other tools that we have in our developer toolkit, right?
Right.
An example related to that, we had a hackathon that I did, for 3 or 4 years ago at this point, but we needed something for the judges reviewing the what people were presenting as part of the hackathon. We needed something for the judges to be able to keep score and determine who the winner was at the end of it. So while the teams were hacking away on their projects, we were quickly putting together a Powerapp that did that for the judges. So the judges signed in, they gave their score, and then it tallied it all up at the end, and we were able to present who won, basically, but all done in a couple hours on a Powerapp.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. No, and so this is, if you have a connection to the data and you have, or if you're connecting to Dataverse, the ability to build out your own data, you can create a quick form like this and get something that you can put in front of your business users, or and kind of your coworkers if you're on the business side, where we'll put something together for a future show, but have something where there are things that we can do if we get out of this application. Save, it's fine. And we start looking at some of the things that are interesting. Here we go. We get back to the main window here. We start looking at some of the things that we can do in here. We can get into something called, and we'll look at next time, something called custom connectors. And what that is, you go through that list of several hundred connectors. There's pretty much, everything in there that you might think of, except for Twitch, that you might want to be able to connect to, except your line of business applications, because those are the things that the people who build connectors don't know about. Well, what if we could give you the ability to connect to your data, your line of business data, and those APIs that sit over top of it, and then just create a custom connector to bridge that gap. And that's what this component or this function inside of here provides. And what's really cool is it gives you the ability to import as well. So if you're using a service in Azure, so this is our conference API, and I could do subscription, and I could look at my service. We're going to say it could be API management, but it could just be a function, or it could be a logic app, because the logic app has the ability to pull data in as well. I'm going to do API management. Yep, going to do this one. And then we're going to say that one. So now it's, basically because of what we pointed it to, it's able to wire, it knows, how to talk to API management. So we're able to get all that information pulled in here. API management uses an API key to be able to talk to it and subscribe to those APIs. But if we weren't using that, there are other mechanisms that we could use as well to talk to API. So think of that that blog post we showed at the beginning around securing your backend APIs with OAuth. Well, what if we used OAuth for the person who is using the Powerapp to be able to then have essentially their token passed down into API management and the API? So we could wire that up too, and still keep everything secure, even though it's a custom connector. There's our list of sessions that are of methods that are available. We could look at one specifically, like sessions, and then we see what's the request. What do we need? What do they have the capabilities to send in the query string, and then what that response is. So being able to map out a response and the shape of that payload here, essentially. So import the JSON response from that, gives us a bunch of properties that we can then use to send back and populate a form with. So this is some of the cool things that we can get into when we think about a developer side, right? Developers own the API landscape. They understand how to build the APIs connected to API management. They would probably do this part as well, but once it's there, your line of business person can come along and say, hey, there's a custom connector that already exists in our environment that lets us talk to our conference API. We can just pull that into our application.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Like I could see us building these custom connectors for our, the term you're using, like citizen developer, like within our organization. We would say, well, yeah, sure, we'll provide you access to some of our data sets. So just calling the API. I mean, so we already have the APIs. They're there to be used. And then they could tie these into their apps that they need, to get their job done and stuff like that, which is cool.
Yep, absolutely.
I like that.
So that's just one of the things that we can talk about when we talk about the developer side of Powerapps. And maybe, as we get through late May, we'll put that on the schedule.
Yeah. That's cool. Very cool.
Yep. So go give it a try. Either you have access to Powerapps in your organization, or if you then where is it?
Visual Studio
Go check
Dev
it out.
Essentials. Yeah, which there's a lot of cool stuff in. There's a trial Azure account, I think. You get $200 credit.
I saw that there's a trial Azure account. Yep.
Yeah.
Get 200 hours or something like that, I thought I saw. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some other stuff in there too. The community version of Visual Studio for Mac and Visual Studio Community. So, yeah. And all you do is sign up. There's nothing special about it, I think.
Exactly.
Cool. Nice. Excellent. Learn some new stuff.
Sorry, just reading through the chat.
All I need is time.
Exactly.
What do you think then? Is that a show?
I think that could be.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I mean, it's one thing to say like, oh, look at the possibilities, but now it was interesting to me that if you can supply it with a data source, it can pretty much say, well, you probably want some app that lets you browse these things, and then you probably want a way to edit them. And yeah, I actually do have some things. Even I'm just thinking about some stuff where I work that it would be really, there's an API or maybe some way to get data, but that's cumbersome compared to basically just throwing Powerapps at it and saying, here, you go look at the API. What if it's even like a Swagger based API, so it can figure out just about everything it needs to about it and say, you go look at it and create some forms over data, and then I can work around those edges once you've done the heavy lifting.
Yeah. Yep. You can fine tune it. But yeah, that's the making that data accessible is something that oftentimes is, at least at this point, that's the thing that may not always be in place in a way, right? Oh, we usually, connect via SQL connection string. So how does that happen? Well, you got to put some kind of API layer over top of it to make that happen pretty much. And that's something you kind of should be doing anyway, but.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I think the cool part is, right? Like we don't want to, sure, we've got databases and we could allow people to connect to our databases this way as well. But it's really much better if we build that API over the top of it and we control the access. And I like that. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then it's easy for people to consume those things, like you said, with Swagger API, Swagger and all that kind of stuff. So it's
we
good.
didn't get to talk about the Dataverse.
I got to start using this.
But it sounds like the Dataverse is an opportunity to say, hey, you've got some data and you don't want to give people direct access to it. So instead you somehow, and we didn't talk about it too much and haven't looked at the documentation. If you can set up the procedure to get it into Dataverse, that's the secure sandbox. And then you go from there. Now, we didn't look at that at all, but as we were doing this, I had the documentation up and I found the whole section on what the Dataverse is so interesting. Because I said, I didn't even know what that term meant. And now I kind of do. I mean, I'm not an expert, but, but I certainly understood what they were talking about there, right? Like, I don't know. It's weird. It's all so new that I'm not sure what to make of it yet, but
yeah,
like building the infrastructure to enable business insight can be time consuming and expensive. Therefore, your data originates from a variety of devices. So the Dataverse addresses these concerns by basically making a SaaS data service that you would load. I guess you load your data into it, or I don't know. It kind of sounds like that's what it is.
Yeah. And that whole list of, think about getting data, that whole list of connectors or Power Query connectors was, are the possible places where you might be able to pull that data in from. So
cool, Rich. We've been talking about this a long time, and I never took the opportunity to even do like a Power Platform, quick start or anything but seeing that it's tied to kind of your, I don't know if I'm right in using this term. It's kind of tied to your 365 tenant maybe. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be with Dev Essentials, but if at work they've opened that up, you can try creating your own Powerapp or using flows.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you can certainly use it in, you don't have to tie it back into that tenant if you've got some place to play around with it. What you don't get is that when we created the custom connector and we looked into my Azure subscription and said, well, the service lives in Azure for our API endpoint that we want to include in this connector, give me the choices to pull that in. You don't get that tight connection that way. You'd have to manually say, I want to manually create or connect to an API. So where's the URL that it lives? How are we connecting? What's the authentication mechanism? You would have to wire all of those things up yourself. That's the only difference.
Cool. All right. So Playwright next week. Super exciting.
Yeah.
Andy's super excited about it. It's going to be end-to-end web testing, I think is what the website says. So I'm going to go with that.
End-to-end.
Fast and reliable end-to-end testing for modern web apps. So,
well, we'll take a look and we will see, like, do we think it's end-to-end? Do we think it's all those things? We'll find out. No spoilers, right? We don't want to tell people it's the end-to-end. We just want to tell people there's options. And will we get to the end? I don't know.
What will we get from one end to the other?
It might be tricky, but we're going to try. We're going to try to at least get to one end. Will we get to the other? Tune in next Wednesday night to find out.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
All right. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us.
Rich.
We had some friends in the chat, and we appreciate you being here. And if you're watching us in the future on YouTube, again, give us a like or hit the subscribe button or write in the comments what you think about what we've talked about, or if you have any questions and if you'd like to see a follow-up show, or if you're a Power Apps expert and you want to be on the show, the comments is a great place to reach us, because we like to learn from the audience, right? So that's it until April 27th. Be back here at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. We look forward to seeing you. And for my co-hosts Andy Schwam and Rich Ross, I am Chris Gomez, and we will see you next time on the Dev Talk Show.